What if I told you I found a loophole, I found a policy, and take me to different lenders out there where I can keep on borrowing and borrowing and borrowing under different trust structures and my borrowing power is not affected? Sounds too good to be true? Well, guess what? It is. Today, I'm going to show you all the negatives on borrowing under a trust structure. I'm your host, Tony Shah. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Mortgage Chat. So let's get down to it. Trust structure. It's been very popular the last 4 or 5 years. Why? Unlimited borrowing. It sounds great. I can buy 10 properties. Woohoo! But guess what? There are negatives when buying under a trust structure where a lot of your brokers, a lot of your bankers, a lot of your buyer's agents are telling you to buy under a trust structure when it doesn't even fit a lot of the clients or know how the logistics on a trust structure works on the back end. Today, I'm going to tell you and show you why a trust structure may not even be the right thing for you. So let's break it down. The first thing I'll always say to a client when they want to borrow under a trust, there's a few things you have to understand. Number one, negative gearing. So there is no negative gearing benefits that get transferred to your individual name. So you can't reduce your taxable income from all the cash outlay, negative gearing from that investment property, and all the negative gearing stays within the trust. Okay, so for example, your negative gearing or cash outlay out of your own pocket is $10,000 for that particular property. Now, for a normal property that you purchased under your individual name, you can use that 10 grand cash outlay from maintaining the property to reduce your taxable income by $10,000. So at tax time, your taxable income is reduced by 10 grand, and if your tax bracket is 30%, for argument's sake, you're going to get 3 grand back as a tax refund. But because it's under a trust structure, all the negative gearing stays within the trust until the property becomes positive geared. Who knows when that's going to be? Another thing a lot of people don't understand, you have to do bloody financials on different trusts every year. Okay, so if I have trust 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because hey, do you know what? Some broker BA out there saying keep buying 10 properties under 10 different trusts. You have to do financials for every one of those trusts. And depending on your accountant, they love that. They're going to charge you anywhere between $1,500 to $2.5 grand per trust every year. That's a big bill you have to pay out of your own pocket. So already 2 negatives right there, right? No negative gearing, therefore no big tax return back because all the negative gearing stays within the trust. And secondly, accounting costs, right? Because you have to pay for tax returns and financials for that trust every year on top of your individual tax returns. And guess what? The lenders in the bank that still do trust lending, they've actually jacked up the rates for trust loans. So as an example, ANZ, Westpac Group, they've actually jacked up their rates by at least 0.5% in comparison to individual residential investment rates. So you're already paying a 0.5% more for these type of loans. So therefore, you're going to be more cash outlay in regards to that. Now, another thing is, the last 6 months, we've seen a lot of lenders restrict the criteria policy with trust lending, right? So for example, Macquarie Bank, they've put it all together. And with CBA, they only do trust lending if you're an existing customer. And if you already have trust loans within that bank, guess what's going to happen? They are not excluding the trust loans from that entity for the new entity borrowing on this trust. So guess what? There's no unlimited borrowing. And if you watch my video, it explains why a trust entity or trust lending has been very beneficial to maintain unlimited borrowing power. Okay, so what some banks also require is to exclude the debt from that trust so you can borrow more on this trust. You need an accountant's letter to say this trust here, number one, is self-sustainable and can look after its own debt. The problem is a lot of these trust loans, unless you have a lot of cash sitting there against the offset account, it's not going to be neutrally geared. And another problem is refinancing, right? Because there is not a lot of lenders that will, number one, exclude debt from different trust entities, and number two, even do trust loans. It's very hard if, for example, you got a trust loan at CBA with 5 years interest only, and the interest only is about to expire, and you need to refinance to an ANZ, for example. Guess what? It's going to be very hard because ANZ do not exclude other trust entities in the calculations. So because they weren't excluded, in their mind, you're already over capitalized. So you have to watch out you don't overextend yourself, or you have a plan B when the interest only term expires that you can refinance to another lender. But the problem is 5 years is a long time away. So anything could happen in the first 3 months after you settle, let alone 5 years, okay? That's something you have to really watch out for. Now, the biggest part is cash flow, right? So let's just say for argument's sake, you're going to borrow 80% of the purchase price only because the other 20% deposit plus stamp duty is from your own cash savings. So therefore, the LVR or the total borrowing against this property under the trust is only at 80%. Now, can guarantee you the debt is not going to be neutrally geared even if you're getting a 5% rental yield and you're borrowing 80%. And I'm going to show you why. So let me show you now the cash flow on holding a property at $650,000 and borrowing 80% with a 5% rental yield. And I can guarantee you, you're going to be negative geared already per month, and it's going to be cash outlay out of your own pocket. Okay, so let's use this as an example. 650 at 80% loan, which is 520 loan at 6.5% investment interest only loan. Therefore, my monthly repayment interest only is $2,816.66. Okay, that's borrowing 80% of the purchase price. Now remember, I'm going to use a 5% rental yield, which I'm being quite generous. Okay, so the rent received per month is going to be $2,708.33. Okay, and that's gross rent, by the way, gross before expenses. So already I'm going to have a shortfall right there. Okay, now I'm going to use 80% of that only because I'm going to keep 20% as an expense, right? Property management, council rates, water rates, insurances, some repairs, right? So I'm going to take away 20% as an expense. So I'm left with 80%, which is that. So I'm left with $2,166.66 after expenses. Take away that, I'm going to be short $649 per month. No negative gearing on that, so that's my negative gearing, right? If I was to put that under my individual name, I can claim that back and reduce my taxable income. But because I'm under a trust structure, guess what? I gotta fork this out of my own pocket. So now what's going to be my yearly cash flow, right? So if I go $649 per month, that's going to be negative out of my own pocket, which equates to $7,788 out of my own pocket. Plus, I've got to account for accounting fees and asset registration, which is another $2,000. So give or take, my out of pocket from that property is going to be around $9,788 per year just to maintain it. So if you love people seeing you the dream about, hey, keep buying under different trust structure so you can buy multiple properties, well, guess what? Yes, it sounds great. It sounds good. It sounds like a dream, but your cash flow also has to sustain that structure. I just showed you buying something for $650,000, borrowing 80%, which is a very good asset, by the way. You're going to be out of pocket $9,788 every year. How many of those properties can you sustain every year after tax, right? If you're being sold the dream of buying 5 properties under trust structures, your cash outlay is going to be 5 times $9,788, which equates to $48,940 out of your own pocket every year just to maintain 5 properties with no gearing benefits. So a lot of the problems we have these days is we have a lot of clients, new, existing, older clients that are being sold the dream from buyer's agents and other mortgage brokers or real estate agents to keep buying under a trust structure. Well, yes, it sounds great in theory, but practically the cash flow, you can't sustain it, right? So if my salary is $150,000 after tax, I'm probably pocketing around $110,000 in my pocket. So if I have to allocate $50,000 of that 110 grand to sustain the 5 loans, I only got around $60,000 to live off for the whole year. So if I have another mortgage repayment or if I have to pay rent, live the dream, go out, go on holidays, I don't have much fat left to live off and live the dream or sustain in the long run, okay? But do you know what? If I actually invested under my individual name, more or less that $50,000 minus $10,000 cost for accounting fees and trust fees and all that, whatever you want to call it, that $40,000, I can use that to reduce my taxable income by 40 grand. And based on, for argument's sake, a tax rate of 30% to make things easier, I will get $12,000 back as a tax refund. You get what I'm trying to say here. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm not being negative. I just want to show you how a trust structure works and the potential harm that it could cause you if you keep on buying under different trust structures. Because sometimes investing under an individual name could be more beneficial for you if you plan it a little bit more better. So if you do need help, book a time in with my calendar link or go to my website and let's get cracking on a strategy session. I'm your host, Tony Shah, and thanks for joining me on another episode of the Mortgage Chat.